So my name is Susan O'Brien, and I am the secretary of the OSARC, Organization of Staff Analysts, Retirees Club. Joan Borovoy cannot be with us. She had to deal with an illness that her mother had this morning, and so she asked me to fill in for her. So please be nice to me, because I never even heard of Zoom until, long after I retired. So I will do the best that I can. So let me start by, hold on 1 second. Let me just start by, by introducing the board. So it's Joan Borovoy, who is the chair, Mark Lewis, who is the acting vice chair, myself, who's the secretary, Colleen Cox, who is a consultant, Judith Lovell, who's on the call, who is a volunteer, and Jay Warshofsky, who is our Comro rep. And then we have able assistance from Rob Spencer, who is the Director of Media Services for the union, and Megan Woofsey, who is the assistant to the president. And you know that they periodically send you information that you need. So just to talk for a second about Zoom etiquette. So those of you who have not been on the call before, just we ask that you stay muted throughout the call unless you have raised your hand and we have asked you to speak, or you want to ask a question. When we come to the question and answer part of the presentation, if you could use the raise hand function. If you don't know how to do it, when we get there, Rob will explain how to do it. And then wait to be called on. We try to do it in the order that the hands are raised, if I can figure that out. If you can't or don't have access to raising your hand on the function, you can write something in the chat. Or if that's not possible, if you're on the phone, you could, yell at some point at the end and we'll get to you. Okay, so that's essentially it for the Zoom etiquette. So as for today being September 11th, the board really debated about whether or not we would even have a meeting today. But we just felt that there was enough of us that felt that it would be wonderful to have a meeting where we had an opportunity to just be with one another, share if we want to share, which we could do later in the meeting, and have a presentation that wasn't just fact-based. It is fact-based, of course, but that was also helping us deal with emotion and stress and the pain that might still be coming up for people because of this day. So the first thing we wanted to do was have a moment of silence for all those who we have lost, on September 11th. Okay, thank you very much all for that. And then, of course, we know that September 11th was not just about the issues that people feel after that day, had not just about people who we have lost, which were many, of course, but it's also about the trauma that many of us still feel to this day, and the people who experience trauma that day and the days after, people who are sick as a result of their involvement. And so I think that the presentation for today is an attempt to address some of that. And we hope that this will be useful for folks. So the presentation today is called The Nervous System, Healing Physically and Emotionally for Everyday Life. Our presenter is Heather Sanderson, who has been on a path of healing for 20 years. She first found yoga when healing a physical illness, and then continued to explore many different ways of working with and healing emotional and psychological trauma. She draws upon different traditions, including yoga, meditation, Reiki, sacred plant medicine, neuroscience, and cognitive behavioral therapy to create accessible ways for everyone to find their own way to learn what they need for themselves. She's authored 20 plant and tree spirit short reads in the Dreaming with the Plant series, and 5 books in the Future is Possible series. She teaches classes in many disciplines to bring this information to others in as many ways as possible. So today, she's going to focus on the nervous system and how it functions in relation to stress and trauma, and why and how to support it as a key to healing both physically and emotionally. We'll also talk about what happens as emotions are stored in the body over time and ways to present them and ways to release them. The presentation will include a short guided meditation and a relaxation to allow you to connect with your breath and be present with your physical body and emotions so you can experience for yourself what we will be discussing in the meeting. So I'm going to now present Heather Sanderson. Heather?
Thank you, Susan.
Sure.
Hi, everybody. I first wanted to just say thank you to Judith for inviting me to come and speak here today. We met at a meditation class, or a few of them now, and it really is an honor to be here. So thank you. And I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me for a moment. Ta-da. Here we go. So I'm going to start with talking about what we're going to talk about, and then we'll dive in and get into the experiential part at the end. So here's our overview. We're going to go into what is the nervous system? What is this thing we're talking about? What does it do for us and its different functions? And then how does it work in relation to stress, trauma, depression, anxiety at a pretty high level, but just to give you a sense of why this is an important part of our body. And then why the nervous system holds the key to healing, and that is in relation to energy, emotion, how we take all of this information from the outer world or situations into us, and then what we might do with it. We'll talk about ways to discuss and support and heal the system, and how this impacts your everyday life. And then we'll have some experiencing. So loving kindness meditation is a great way to learn how to access all of what we're talking about. So I tend to be a little bit abstract, and I am trying my best to be concrete, but you may have questions if you're like, oh, what does that mean specifically? As we go, I'm trying my best, but please hold those questions until the end, and then I will try my greatest to answer them all. And what I really like to do in terms of teaching is offer information up front, and then have something so that you can feel what we're talking about within you. And I hope that helps things to land, even if they feel a little bit abstract. Okay, so the nervous system, what is it? It has 2 main parts, and you can see an image over here. And there's the central nervous system, which is your brain, your spinal cord, and this comes down into all the way to the base of your spine, that root. And then there's this peripheral nervous system, and all these yellow lines you can see on that image, if you can see it, are all of the nerves. So the sensations that you might feel on your fingertips are your nerves, right? And the like nervous feeling you might get in your solar plexus when you're doing something new, for example. That's your part of your peripheral nervous system. And all of these parts that are on this periphery feed into and connect with the central nervous system that runs up and down the spine to the brain, and they all send messages back and forth to each other, in a nutshell. So, next step. There's 2 parts to this peripheral nervous system that's doing all of this work and communicating. Part of it is that it guides your voluntary movement. So the brain's saying, do something, and you're consciously making a choice, and the body's responding, right? And then the autonomic nervous system regulates the activities you do without thinking about them, like breathing, heart beating, stuff that we've done so many times over and over that you don't have to consciously put effort into it. It's just there. So I'm going to add to that this doesn't mean only physically moving the body, but it's also part of forming our behaviors, responses to situations, responses to others, emotions, and even beliefs about ourselves. So the nervous system is very involved in how we think, how we are. And so much of how we behave is in that part that is involuntary, not conscious, because it's something that has been stored in the body over time we may not even be aware of. And this is a key part of why healing is important to this system. So we'll circle back to that. What the nervous system does and its different functions a little bit more. So that autonomic system, so we've got the periphery, and then we've got the part that is doing things without us really knowing, right? There's two parts of that system. And those are the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And it's really one system, so they aren't separate, but this is where most of our focus will be today. So the sympathetic nervous system. This is where you might have heard of this or have come across it already in your life. The body responds to a stress by reacting with a response of fight, flight, freeze, and now they're adding in, they being the psychologist, fawn. So this is when we have something happen that is stressful. And we'll talk a bit more about examples of what that might be, but a response might be to like want to go at it, right? Like, something's happening, I'm going to attack it. You might want to flee, get out. You might just stop and completely just freeze up. Or fawning is about really people pleasing. So how do I kind of hide and make everything safe around me? The sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system are really about safety, right? So am I safe, unsafe? How do I respond? Okay. So why is this important? Some of the sympathetic nervous system, when we're in this fight, flight, freeze response, we have adrenaline and cortisol get flooded into the system extra. Okay, so our blood pressure starts to increase, blood flow to the extremities increases. The body may over time start to cut off what it doesn't need, just energetically. So like blood flow starts to decrease to the extremities. It starts to come into the core. So we want to stay alive, basically, right? The system's starting to be like, there's a threat. I want to keep going. How do I do that? I cut off what I don't need, right? I start to insulate. I start to bring everything in to that central system, that central core. Everything else can manage later when I'm safe again. So what happens then, the other systems are the parts of the body that the nervous system decides we don't need in order to get through whatever's happening. Digestion can kind of disappear or slow. You might not have any appetite. Fertility decreases, immune system weakens. Muscles might be constantly tight because we're in this constant state of like trying to figure out like what is happening. How do I stay safe? What do I do? You might have more urination, or bowels might release more, and your metabolism might increase. So there's a heightened state or a heightened sense of trying to just get through it. Okay, so that's the one part, the sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system is the rest, relax, digest. So you might hear rest and digest around this system. And what happens when we're in that state of rest is kind of the opposite. So blood pressure and heart rate decrease, muscles relax, brainwaves slow, blood flow increases throughout the body, digestion improves, fertility improves, immunity improves, and this is all in your physical body. So even just changing the vibration of my voice just made my nervous system go to a different state of calm. And what we can do with this is know that we're in relative safety, and this is where healing starts to happen. Physical healing starts to take place in all of these systems in your body. Your body knows it wants to restore itself. It just sometimes doesn't get a chance to come into these states. One side note, the nervous system also extends energetically beyond the body. So you may have the ability to like sense or feel around you or know that there's someone behind you. And that is part of the nervous system communicating into your physical body, into the surrounding area, like what is happening. Am I safe, not safe? Okay. This is all context. All context. And it's important to note it is all one system. So it's sometimes, you know, we humans, we like to separate and make things all either or, but it's very and it's very much like these systems are both there to help us. They're both there to help us thrive and survive. And not one's not better than the other. It's just that one might get overemphasized. And it tends to be the fight, flight, freeze. That tends to be the one that often people end up hanging out in and circumventing the rest and digest, so that healing space. But we do need to regulate how to move between them and how to perhaps have more access to that rest and digest. And we're going to talk about how to do that. Okay, so those are the systems in a nutshell. I do a lot of hand talking. So what is stress? A stressor is literally anything that throws your system out of balance. So it might be an acute physical stress, a chronic physical stress, or psychological, social stressors, combination of all of these things. In New York City, we often have a combination of all of these things and then some, right? So one of the like sort of famous examples is these systems are so ingrained in us. There are ancient ancestral systems of responding to actual threats in an environment like a predator, a tiger, a bear, an animal. So in the ideal situation, our ancestors would have been like, you know, there's a threat, there's a bear coming at me, a tiger coming at me. I'm gonna fight, flight, freeze, do what I need to do. Once I'm back and safe, everything comes back to that state of rest and digest. In fact, we probably hang out there more than in the fight, flight, freeze. It's just there temporarily, you know, get us out, get us into a safe situation again. And these can be big stresses, minor stresses, things that we aren't even aware of that happened around us as children. The information starts to come into the body and build up. So we're going to talk about how that works. But part of this too, just like I know I'm not super sciencey, love science, but my focus is really on energy and the emotional part. But to give you some of it, in case you're more sciencey, when there's a physical danger or an injury or a wound, the body releases that stress hormone, so cortisol. We talked about it a bit before. Adrenaline picks up, cortisol floods the system. And if it were in the sense of the tiger, the bear, there's an appropriate amount. You know, we have a bit of it when we wake up every morning. We need it. And then we regulate back. So what happens is when there is a risk that is passed or a wound, a physical wound in the body that is healed, we're no longer in danger, the cortisol reduces. However, the body doesn't know, it doesn't understand yet in our state of evolution when it's a psychological wound. So it reacts the same way. And cortisol's released in the system, but there's no physical wound to heal, and there's no threat that you can visibly see has perhaps left. So it's all invisible. So it doesn't know when to stop releasing necessarily. And in time, the body and the system can come flooded with this hormone. And so much so that it can start to feel normal. It can start to feel normal to stay in that state of fight, flight, freeze, or hypervigilance, you know, making everything kind of controlled in certain ways so that you can operate. And that's fine. There's no good or bad. It's just like, that's what we do. And so when we operate these high levels of stress, it can start to feel abnormal to go into that rest and digest. Like the systems start to crash. And in fact, they probably do because we're changing the cortisol levels. Cortisol, fun fact, can also like come out of the body into the people around you. It can be absorbed by others. So you might see this happen in a group dynamic. If there's someone, especially if it's like an alpha person or a person in the lead, the hormone can actually infiltrate the rest of a team, for example. Side note. Okay, so how energy and emotion enter and build up in this system. Again, all context for when we get to our meditation. we've got the system, we got everything that's sensing around us. So this raw data that comes into our bodies is just its sensation at its core. So we're walking down the street and you feel a vibe, we might say, around, and that you can't even see something yet, but you know something is up there that you're like, oh, what's happening? That's a sensation, right? So it starts to come into the body. It tells us something. We start to interpret it in some way. That can then become an emotion. So the root of all emotions are sensation. We're sensory beings. And the heart is our main sensory organ, actually. So the heart's part of this whole system too. And the information comes in, it starts to get stored in the body, in the nervous system, physically in some way. It's like a little hook, a little chink, a little like, oh, there's this thing that's happening, beware. And then it becomes an emotion, and we start to learn all of what we might do to be present with or get away from that emotion. Okay. And this is all often working on an unconscious level. So we're completely unaware of it. And often this stems back to things that have happened in childhood, but then may be reinforced over time, or new traumas that come in and stresses that come in your life. So a really easy example that you can extrapolate, I hope, is say you're a kid and you're like super joyful and you're skipping down the street and there's like a big dog at the end of the street and it starts to come like bark at you, come at you. That sensation, you're going to feel something, right? You're going to feel, oh, there's something happening. It gets taken into the body. It might be something that gets stuck and stored in there. It might become fear. It might become panic. It might become worry. It might become any of the emotions we might have. And then perhaps you can shake it off, literally get out.
Sorry, Heather. Could you unmute yourself by accident? We just muted you.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry about that. Could
that's
you just
okay.
go back one sentence or two and then pick it up there? Apologize.
Worry at the dog.
We had finished, I think, the dog, but that was
Okay. Perfect. Then, so you've had an experience, whatever it is, the dog's just an example. And then you're gonna figure out how to reset yourself, perhaps, and perhaps you can shake it off and it's fine. And that doesn't, you feel the emotion in the moment, you get out, all good. But if it happens over time, if a situation keeps happening over and over, and we don't know how to clear it out, we don't know how to get it out, or the charge of the emotion is so high, the body and the nervous system can't handle it in the moment, we will start to move away from it in lots of ways. And those ways could be trying to not skip down the street anymore, starting to believe that you can't have fun anymore, right? Starting to not leave the house anymore. In extreme examples, these are all possible things in order to avoid feeling that raw sensation that was there to tell us something once upon a time. So this is how things start to get built up in the system. So from a whole system perspective, all the system being that nervous system, you can maybe start to see how these like building blocks of little bits of sensation and emotion getting stuck, or I don't want to feel that way. I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to build up a whole different way of being so that I can avoid ever walking down that street again, for example, can lead to depression, anxiety. This is trauma. It all has to do with these energy blocks. And some might build up in excess, or then we might start to have something that we don't have enough of, or not enough energy, or to like walk down that street again because we didn't have support to do so, and go face that dog, right? And go be like, oh, actually right now it's a nice puppy. Or it's still scary. I am going to protect myself and not go down that street again. That's fine. It's just an example to try to extrapolate into your own life where you might have these things that get built up. So we won't spend too much time on these overviews, but just so you can see the relationship between the nervous system and these different conditions that people are working with. And I really like the language of working with, because it is an energy. Depression, anxiety, trauma, they're all energies that we can work with and move through and be present with. And that's part of it, is being able to feel and sense those sensations at the raw level and they come into your system so that they don't end up getting stuck for always. They might get stuck for a little while. But if they do start to build up, they can lead to all these different kinds of depression. And there's a whole bunch of different kinds. But you might feel sluggish, agitated, withdrawn, anxious, moving back and forth between not being able to, get up off of the couch or wake up in the morning, to being like out in the world to avoid feeling like out in the world too much and then crashing. These are all really extreme examples, but again, just so you can start to get a sense of where this might show up for you. And same with anxiety. So anxiety is our natural response to a threat. If you've seen any of the Inside Out movies, you'll know this. In the new one with the teenager, anxiety comes on board. It's a really great film if you have a chance to see it. And parts of it are healthy. They're there to protect us, right? Like anxiety starts to be linked to fear, and that's not the problem. It's healthy when it can be something that gets us out of a situation. Where it starts to become not as helpful as when we hold on to that fear, hold on to those sensations, those emotions, and they hold us back from living in some way. And again, this is very natural. It's what we all do. Now we're learning how to work with it in new ways, so that it doesn't dominate and run our lives. And this is where trauma comes in too. It's not, this is not an exhaustive, it's very complex. Trauma can be very complex. So this is really high level overview. But it's basically when something happens, there's an experience or situation that is just too much. So too much to handle for our human body, all of the systems shut down. And again, that's a way to stay safe in the moment. Nervous system's trying to prevent all of a huge surge of raw information or data coming in, and the emotions might need to wait. So we're going to put them on hold. We're going to have that fight, flight, freeze moment. We're going to freeze. We might put them on hold. And then we get to go back and excavate and get them out of the system later. And that's part of the healing piece. Right. And so this is where also so that skipping example down the street, the dog, so say it was a snake, you might start to now imagine or see like every stick looks like a snake. So now we're starting to feed that imaginary cortisol stream and that imaginary buildup of information when it's actually not a threat. And that's when it starts to perhaps impact the life a little bit more. So I'm just going to check our time. We're still good. If everything starts as this raw sensation, and emotion is a big part of healing, learning how to stay present with those sensations is a really big part of having them have their moment and then move out of you, so that you don't have to start to build all this scaffolding and structure of avoiding them and then avoiding the situation or avoiding similar ones or avoiding sticks. Right? So we start to learn how to be present, especially with that higher charge of something that's happened or something that was really intense, and we stored it in the body and the nervous system. Now, in a moment of safety, you can go back and start to have a feeling of those same sensations so that they can have their moment and move out of your system and give you more space. All of the emotions just want to use the physical body to be felt and move on. It's the human condition that we start to build beliefs and structures around keeping them because it's scary and it's hard to do this a lot of the time. So we try to avoid the sensations. But once felt, that high intensity charge that happened perhaps in a moment that was too much, starts to be less and starts to be less and starts to be less. And in time, the energy physically releases from the body. And then you can have different choices and do things differently because they're not stored anymore. So now there's less control over these raw sensations, this raw data, forming your beliefs, your behaviors, and you can start to rewire your thoughts, your beliefs, your brain. So if we go back to the dog example, if it was an extreme response and perhaps the child now never wants to skip again, doesn't believe they can be happy even, right? So that was a threat to joy. Then if we go back and feel like, oh, that was scary and I'm safe and okay, and feel the actual sensation that the body has stored, then I I can now start to be like, oh, maybe I can try to have fun again. Oh, maybe I can try to skip again. Oh, and like reclaim some of that past in a new way. So everything, from a neuroscience perspective, we used to think everything's hardwired in the brain and you are who you are, and that's completely false. And so everything is very flexible and malleable, and we can change and grow. And this is part of that. So the trick becomes simultaneously releasing old energy, so clearing the system out, staying present, if possible, with new sensations that are happening in a moment, so not putting anything new into this nervous system, and then not applying anything that's happening past or currently to the future all at once. And that's where we start to need support because that can be really complex. And there's lots of ways to support the nervous system. Really healthy food, nutrients, it really wants to be nourished. Breath work, just sitting with your breath, meditation, movement, yoga, energy practices, herbs, actually resting. Like, it might seem kind of counterintuitive, but if you want to feel rested, you actually have to rest. That was a big epiphany for me once upon a time, actually. So, doing the thing that you need or want more of in your life, being in nature, and then actually focusing on cultivating joy, love, pleasure, massage work, body work, all of those things help. And of course, therapy. So combination of these things also helps move the energy out. And so we get stuck in these trauma cycles often where we start to focus on healing as only being getting that, stuff that happened out of you and moving on. But it's also part of enhancing positive feelings, enhancing joy. So making a list of the things that you find joyful, or one thing, and doing it. So in time, the body learns that it can be safe. If you start to feel the presence of those sensations, know that you're still okay. And you can rest, receive. You don't need to maybe be as on guard all of the time. This then improves sleep, digestion, all of the other systems we've talked about, relationship to self and others, creates more opportunities for connection, pleasure. Overall, it helps to improve your mental health, might create new ways of seeing yourself even. Everyday interactions can feel more manageable. It brings a sense of wholeness and not a segmenting of self or life, and more freedom and flexibility, both internally, externally, out into the world, and allows more of a sense of feeling safe. But this all comes from within. So getting that comfortable way of being with sensation so that the emotions aren't something that dominate your decision making, but are there to just be felt and experienced and moved through. And this also helps to have a wider ability to problem solve and not be stuck in one way of thinking or one mindset or one belief. Black or white absolutes start to disappear. Okay, so we are going to try a loving kindness meditation, and then we'll talk a little bit about why this meditation is helpful for healing and how to work with it without having to meditate. So if you've never meditated in your whole life, it's okay. It'll be okay. And we're going to try it together. So if you're somewhere where you can sit, and I hope you're not driving. If you are driving, please do not do this with your eyes closed. You can just think along with us. But if you're in a safe place where you can have your feet on the ground, or you can even lie down if you'd like to, we're going to start to apply some of this so you can feel it in your own body. So giving yourself a little wiggle, maybe a deeper breath or two, a sigh. And if it's comfortable to you, you can close your eyes. Or you might have the gaze looking just down towards the ground. And let out a nice exhalation. Hands can rest on your legs. And start to notice your breath. And see, as you notice your breath, if you can soften your jaw, soften your fingers. Without changing your natural breath, begin to notice what happens to the body as you breathe in. Notice what happens as you breathe out. And breathing in on your own breath and out. And begin to bring your attention to your heart. And just notice as you breathe in any sensations right at that screen of the heart. As you breathe out, staying with the sensations you can feel in your heart space, whatever they might be. And staying present with the breath, the sensations that arise on the screen of the heart, carried with the breath. And we'll move into a loving kindness meditation. So begin to bring to mind someone you love. The first person to appear. Maybe you see them or sense them or a name appear. And focus on this person. Feel the sensations in your heart. And keeping this person in your mind, you can silently say to them, may you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you be free. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you be free. Noticing how you feel, any emotions in your body, in your heart. And then let that person go. And bring to mind a person you don't know really well, someone you've passed on the street or in a store, maybe. The first person to appear. And see that person clearly or feel their presence, see their name. And you say to this person who you don't know very well or at all, may you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you be free. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you be free. Notice any sensations or emotions in your body. And let that person go. And then begin to bring to mind someone you find challenging. The first person to appear. And bring this person to mind clearly and stay present with them. And you say to this person, may you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you be free. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you be free. Notice the emotions you might feel, the sensations in your body. And let that person go. And start to bring yourself to mind. You might feel into your body or see an image of yourself exactly as you are, or one from the past. And keeping yourself in your focus, begin to say to yourself, may I be peaceful. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May I be free. May I be peaceful. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May I be free. And being present with any emotions you can feel in your body, any sensations. Honoring whatever is moving through you at this time, with no right answers or only right answers, feeling into your body. And start to bring your attention to your heart. And imagine there's a glowing ball of golden light right at the heart. And if no image comes, that's okay. Just focus on this energy, this space of golden light. We're right at your heart center. And start to remember a moment when you felt joy. Feel what joy feels like in the body. And remember a moment when you felt love. Feel what love feels like in the body. Remember a moment of peace. Feel that peace in the body. And rest on a moment of gratitude. It's okay if none of these moments appear. Being present with what is. And if you can access a moment of gratitude right at the heart, just notice how that feels. Notice what that does to your energy. And you can let that go. Start to return your focus to your breath. Notice how the breath reacts with the body, what happens to the body as you breathe in, as you breathe out. Feel any sensations riding on the breath. You can bring your chin down to the chest. Blink the eyes open and roll your head back up. So allowing you to stay with that experience as long as you'd like. And part of why this particular meditation is helpful for healing is it does start to, within a place of safety, trigger or perhaps bring up emotion that's stored around certain situations or people or beliefs you have about yourself, and starts to reprogram or have that old energy be felt and new energy come in. So the new energy of may you be peaceful, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering, may you be free, might be completely new, and it might be hard to take hold in there or whatever it might be. The old energy like wants to stay alive. It'll do this for a while, but eventually the peaceful, the rest and digest, that system, that function, starts to win out, and then they come into a place of balance. And they'll shift, balance shifts every day. We need different balance all the time. It's not static, it's dynamic. But then we have more choices. Maybe flex to this side, flex to that side, go to the new energy. Yeah, the old's familiar, maybe that's okay right now. But this is one meditation practice that starts to hack the system and cut into those energy patterns. And you can do it without meditating. You can be standing in the line at a grocery store and be frustrated because it's taking forever, and then bring the person you don't know in front of you to mind and repeat these phrases or repeat something else. It starts to reset your system in a way that's accessible and easy. Could be awake in line standing on the street. A few resources, and I know I've gone kind of long, but that's okay. And I do have a guided meditation that's available for free, Spotify, YouTube, etc., if it's something you want to explore more on your own. And I have a book that dives into the neuroscience of this particular practice and how it applies even more with examples to your everyday life. And you can always stay in touch with me in these different ways as well. So I'm going to stop my share and come back to the circle, the group. It is strange to not see faces. I'm so used to seeing faces when I teach. And I thank you so much. And I know I went a bit long, Susan, so I'm happy to stay longer than we discussed. I can stay at least till like 1 to 2 if you need me.
Thank you so much, Heather. That was a wonderful presentation. And I love the meditation. It was absolutely eye-opening. I really liked it a lot.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to ask now is that anybody who's interested would like to ask a question of Heather or make a comment to use the raised hand function. And Rob, they just hit reactions, right?
In most current versions under React, there's a raise hand option there. Others, older versions have raise hand as a separate option.
Okay, great. And again, if that's not something you wish to do or cannot do, you should feel free to use the chat to write a question or just try to reach me some other way. So while we're waiting for folks who might have questions for you, Heather, I had a question. On one of your slides, you listed all of these areas in which all of the ways in which you think that the the energy could be turned around, or the things that keep you in a certain headspace, I guess, could be addressed. But the very, very last one was therapy. And I guess what I always think about is that maybe therapy is the first thing, and that all these other things, body work and foods that you eat and meditation, would supplement that. But I don't know if that's your thinking or not.
I think that's a good question. They're all useful, and they all, to me, you need like everything on the list, really. But if you were going to choose some that are accessible to everybody, not everybody can maybe afford to go see a therapist, then I just wanted to kind of emphasize that there's lots of other things you can do, and you'll find communities of support in other places perhaps. But yeah, you can, if therapy is like the entry point for you, put it at the top of the list. Dynamic list that can be reorganized for your needs.
Okay, well, that's great to know. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now if I can figure out if anybody has raised their hand.
I see Robert on my screen.
How would I see this, Rob, if people have raised?
It's under participants. You don't see it? I mean, I can
No,
recognize people if you like. Bob,
no,
if
I
you
just
could,
didn't know how to do it.
it's
So,
okay. It's in the upper right if you have participants
I
enabled,
do.
and then you'll see a yellow hand. You also see the yellow hands
Oh,
in.
up at the top. Oh, okay. So I see it. Yay, thank you. Bob Pfefferman, you have a question.
Yes. Well, yes, I have questions and comments. I did. Um, when you went to the flood of information, I kind of smiled to myself because I was overwhelmed with all this information. And my first question is, are the slide set available somewhere?
I think we can do that. Yes.
Yes,
Sure.
certainly. You can
Okay.
send it to us.
And,
Yes. It
and
was a
also,
lot to go through very quickly.
for
Yes.
me, it was.
Yeah.
And also your contact information. I'm interested in the guided meditation.
Sure.
So fine. When you talked about the sympathetic nervous system, let me know if I've taken these notes correctly. A physical or psychological danger over a long term can impact the immune system.
Correct.
Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
So I'm not a physician, and you can probably find lots of good resources that will have super sciencey information about that. But from what I can share and understand, it's like the nervous system starts to dominate and take all of the energy and resources away from your other systems. So because it's in a place of threat and you know your body, you want to stay alive, it's going to do everything and take everything that it needs to make sure you get to do that. And that means the other systems, including the immune system, are compromised. And that's where you do start to see autoimmune conditions. Like they root into the nervous system quite often. I'm not saying all the time, but quite often there's a relationship.
Interesting, because I have a peripheral neuropathy.
Okay.
So I found this quite interesting. I always thought that was physical. This is something for me personally to explore with my doctor. So thank you for that. Also, I like the nervous system extending 9 feet. That was good because, yes, we all do somehow feel something. So good. Thank you.
Good. Thanks. Great. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Bob.
How do I put my hands out?
Okay, yeah, it's gonna be mixed up today, so we'll do our best. Okay, I think Judith, you are next.
Okay, I'm reading Susan from the chat. Deborah McKeever says, thank you, excellent meditation. But she says, I have a hard time releasing negative energy regarding myself. So do you have any advice for her?
Thank you, Judith.
Thank you, Judith, and thanks, Deborah.
No problem.
Yeah, I mean, this practice would be great for you then to repeat, because like we talked about a little bit at the end there, that what you're calling negative energy or those stores of what might be beliefs are really, when you take them back to how they started to get into a system, into your body or into your mind, probably stemmed from a sensation or experiences over time. And then the neuroscience of it is the beliefs start to get informed because the nervous system's talking to the brain, right? The central nervous system. And it's trying to also make sure that we don't go into another situation that's the same. And sometimes negative beliefs can be part of trying to keep us safe, which might seem like contradictory, but it can be like we can learn even as a child, like, oh, I can't go into that space because of whatever threat in that room. I'm going to start to believe it's my fault, right? I'm going to start to take it on, and then then I can do something about it, because then it feels like I have control. But if you're a 3 or 4-year-old, you're not going to consciously know you're doing that. And by the time you're an adult, that can build up to a whole wealth of beliefs around how you think about yourself, feel about yourself. Things are, this is just one example, but you can think about, I'm not worthy, I don't belong here, all of these sorts of beliefs that are very, very common. If those are things you're saying like, oh, I've got that, you are not alone. And part of getting to the other state is finding ways to love yourself. And this loving meditation is part of that. So breaking up that old energy, because it's not true. It's just energy that was there to try to do something to keep you safe. And starting to trust that there is a new energy. There's new ways of thinking. There's positive energy. There's joy. It's not all your fault, for example, and start to tell yourself like, I am worthy. Repeat it 400 million times. So whatever you have that's coming to mind over and over in repetition, you need to counteract that by saying the opposite to yourself, honestly, like hundreds of thousands of times, because you've said the negative one more than that, right? And then the new energy, they'll fight it out. But eventually the new one starts to break up the old, and you get to these other new states of being and beliefs. That's in a like high level nutshell. I hope that makes any sense at all. I sometimes have tangents.
Yeah, well, that was fascinating. Thank you very much, Heather. Okay, next, Eileen.
Thank you very much. Something that I've been doing for a long time, you put it into perspective. I'm really good in an emergency and very calm usually. And then it's like I've given myself permission to fall apart afterwards.
Mhm.
And I've done that, done that a lot. And your explanation is like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that can do that. And now I understand why. So that's a comment. And I've also done some stress management training too, but this was a lot of new information. In terms of healing, something that Bob had referred to. So I'm recovering from knee surgery. It's going very well, thank you. But in terms of the meditation, how do you fit in to help the healing on that?
On a physical healing?
Yeah.
So the wonderful part about the nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system is the more you nourish that rest and digest, it heals the physical body. It can start to heal chronic conditions. It can start to allow more of your resources to go to your knee, for example. It doesn't mean we're all just going to like float around and only rest forever, right? We've got to like find the balance between, but it does mean that if it's a place that someone isn't comfortable being in, chances are they need to be in it more. And that will help facilitate more energy to heal the overall system,
Can
no
you
matter what it
explain
is.
that?
So like if you're someone who, and I'm not saying this is you, I'm just saying in general, who avoids rest, right? Or finds it very challenging, or wants to get away from it at all costs, doesn't want to slow down, that to me indicates that's exactly what you need to do in order to help your system learn how to stop. And from that stopping, you start to heal. Things start to heal just because there's space and time, and the resources of the body aren't go, 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 going all the time. They can move to different places. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, a lot of sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good points. Thank you. Judith, you have something from the chat, or you have a question?
Yes, I have something from the chat and I also have a comment. Ralph Martinez says, Heather, you mentioned that our nervous system extends 9 feet around us. How was this determination made? Are we all mystics?
Love it. I mean, I would love to say yes, but I know that's not going to fly. I honestly, I can't remember. I will go and find the information, but you can literally Google. There's a place called the Heart Math Institute that has done so much research on the electromagnetic field of the heart and how much the heart extends outside of the body. And there's like, they've got the proof, they've got the science. Heart Math Institute. that could be where I found this from. This could have been in a yoga teacher training that I did. I honestly can't remember where the information came in. I will say it's not limited to 9 feet. And yes, those, mystics among us might have more capacity or more of a range. I can sometimes sense something 50 feet away. So it's not to say this is a tested, tried and true thing that is one size fits all. Your nervous system is unique to you, and it might be 6 feet, it might be 5 feet, it might be expansive. Like, it's all very, very individual. I'm going to say this is an average that
Mhm.
was found.
Mhm. And then, well, it's very interesting that during COVID, we were to stay 6 feet away from
Mm.
others, so
Mhm.
it's very interesting where they got that number. But when we were doing the meditation, and you said to think of a loved one, I was focusing on my heart space, and I became, very warm. It was calming. The heart rate slowed down. It was very peaceful. But then when you said, think of someone who challenges you, my heart started to beat quickly.
Mm.
And I could feel anxiety and nervousness. And I felt, wow, I said, this is so interesting. What a difference between the challenging person and the person that you really love and care for. So now it's going to make me, really tune in to my heart and how I feel and stay in the present moment.
Oh,
So thank
beautiful.
you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing such good
Thank
information that you
you,
found
Judy.
in your body.
Very helpful. I'm not seeing any other hands. Just to give people a second, if there's more questions, I just wanted to mention something else. Why not? That it just seems as though the kinds of things you're talking about um, uh, problems that people, or things that people take into their system, beliefs about themselves and stuff like that, which often come from childhood. And so when you get to be our age, people, seniors, sometimes those things you've been carrying around for a lot of years, 60, 70, 80 years. And I find that some of those reactions, the depression, the anxiety that you specifically talked about, are heightened in some ways as you age. Some people are depressed in retirement because it's a whole new world and hard to figure out. But I hear friends frequently say that they feel more anxiety as they're older. They're a little bit more frightened of things. And I can't help but think that this is kind of an accumulation of a lifetime of maybe, reactions to things. So regardless, I guess the question is, at our age, our advanced ages, do we really have hope to make these changes like you're talking about, or is it too late for us?
Oh, there's absolutely hope. Yeah, it's up to each individual really, and where you want to go with it. And again, like, some anxiety is good. I was nervous coming today, right? And I was like, I'm so nervous. That's my nervous system. And part of it saying, get out, get out, get out. But I was like, it's going to be fine. Hopefully, this will be very nice people. It's going to be safe. And so that can be part of it, is just addressing and seeing in the moment a response to something, and then having an inquiry with yourself, like a moment of like, oh, this is happening. I feel this way. Is it helping me right now or not? And if it's helping you, great. If it's something that you feel like, I don't want to be like this right now, or this is holding me back from something, that's where, yeah, so much potential, because you have a range of experiences from life and you can pull on something else. So just like in the loving kindness meditation, and what Judith just so kindly shared, like, you can put different sensations in to the mix just by bringing something to mind. Not always, but if it's something that you decide, oh, I want to now choose a different thing than feeling anxious about going to this presentation. I might instead bring to mind someone I love. Change the situation and like draw on a different experience, draw on a different choice from your whole life, because there's a whole bunch of joyful things that have happened, right? Those are built up in your system too. It's just that this system's so dominant and focusing on the harder parts that we forget that there's all of the other information that's wonderful and great and lovely, and we can go into that instead, you know, go back and forth. I don't know if that helps answer, but the answer is
That
yes.
was very helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you, Heather. So, okay, do we have any other questions or comments? Nothing else in the chat, or Judith would have told me. Okay. Well, I want to say thank you so much for your presentation, Heather, and for the wonderful meditation and for just sharing your knowledge with us today. It's been a pleasure.
No,
We-
thank you so much. It's been such an honor. And I will for sure send the slides and my contact information, and feel free to reach out at any time.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Judith
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
suggesting this to us. So thanks again.
Okay, I'm gonna pop off and go walk a dog.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. So, moving on, what we usually have following this is, a report on the Comro meeting from Jay Warshawski, our Comro representative, but I believe there was no Comro meeting to report upon. Is this true, Jay? I don't know if you're on the call.
Comro is rescheduled to next week on account of 9/11.
Okay,
So we'll catch up 3 weeks late.
next month. Okay, thanks a lot. And I'm sorry I didn't mention you as a member of our board. I forgot.
Not
so-
a problem, not a problem.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Health insurance update. So I have not been keeping up, so Rob is going to give us the update as he knows it about what's going on with our health insurance situation. Rob?
Okay, so as you guys know, there are multiple cases that are working their way through the courts in relation to the Medicare Advantage plan that they had tried to put in place back twice in 2021 and then a year and a half later, first with a combination of Emblem and I'm actually an Anthem, I guess, and then the next time with Aetna. So where we're at the moment, the most recent development is that from January of 22 to January of 23, folks who were in GHI senior care were asked to pay a $15 copayment for all of the medical treatments that they had. And then in January of 23, Justice Frank of State Supreme Court put a restraining order on that and stopped the imposition of the copayments on visits and lab tests and so forth. And that was where it stood for a while. What has happened, the reason why that was in place was because there was a contract between Emblem Health and the city that essentially said they were going to take care of the full cost. And so the vendor contract did not have anything in it that allowed for the imposition of the copays. So when the New York City Organization of Retired, I always add a few words in here, public service employees, did their lawsuit, the judge put a freeze on these copays, but also said that the substance of the case would be heard at some future point. Meantime, what's happened is the city went back to Emblem and renegotiated the contract and actually explicitly allows for copayments. So as a result, in January of 25, there will be a reimposition of these $15 copays on GHI senior care. At the same time, the case itself is going to have to proceed to actually be heard in Justice Frank's court. So, and part of that decision will be in relation to whether, for example, folks who paid the copayments for that year are owed a return of that money. or not. There's also a question of whether this was a class action lawsuit. The judge had granted that as permission of that. The city has appealed that, so that has to work its way through the courts. So that's just, all of that is about one case, which is referred to as the Bianculli case by the New York City Organization of Retired Public Service Employees. The next case is the oldest one, and that one is the one that they refer to as the Campion case, which was about how, if you remember in the very beginning, they were proposing that the section 12-126 of the city charter basically allowed certain things to happen. And they were proposing that they would be able to transfer everyone into a Medicare Advantage plan, but continue GHI Senior Care, a Medicare plus Medigap plan, but you'd have to pay. You'd have to buy up and pay the difference, which was really what the city had been contributing for those services previously. So you'd end up taking over from the city on paying for this. Well, that was heard in the favor of the retirees, but it was appealed, and then it was heard on the appellate division level in favor of the retirees. A decision was made, and that was a couple of years back. And then the city has appealed that, so it's going to head to the Court of Appeals, which is the state's highest court. They made a request to the Court of Appeals to be able to have this heard by them, and oral arguments will be heard on November the 19th. So that case is now awaiting hearing by the highest court. The last case is really sort of the nuclear option situation. They refer to it as the Benkowski case. And basically that's the case where Aetna was being proposed as you take Aetna or you have to opt out of city coverage. And that last case, which would have eliminated all the other plans, except I think, HIP, VIP, that was heard by essentially Judge Frank had ruled in favor of the retirees. It was appealed by the city to the appellate division. It was again favorably resulted for the retirees, and the city has now made a request of the highest court, the Court of Appeals, to hear that case. And as of this moment, the Court of Appeals has not decided if it will hear that case or not. So that one's in limbo. A little bit more of limbo. So now you know all of the court cases, all of the variations on the court cases, and there's like the next point of action will be the Court of Appeals hearing on November the 19th, and then there will also be the question of how the copay situation moves forward in January. On a quite other approach, the retirees group has been working with the state legislature to try and put through legislation that would, on the state level, that would mandate that all state workers, city workers would have guarantee that they could maintain traditional Medicare with a Medigap plan. On the city council level, as you may remember, there was a piece of legislation that was introduced. The primary sponsor essentially lost his election, and so far nobody has come forward to be the primary sponsor to reintroduce this on the city council level. So I think that's a quick, maybe more information than you wanted, but there you go.
Thank you, Rob. That was extremely comprehensive and helpful. Anybody have any comments on that before we move on, or any questions of Rob, if he knows the answer?
Yes.
Hi, Bob. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi. I have a few comments. Of course, I've been following this for the last 3+ years, and I'm still confused about the blizzard of court cases and where they are. So anybody that feels a little lost by this really good explanation from Rob, don't feel bad. It's very complicated and confusing, and I still don't have it straight. I want one, perhaps two big developments politically. One is that Mr. Mulgrew from the United Federation of Teachers has abruptly withdrawn his consent for this map, and also for what they're trying to do to actives. I don't know, and maybe Rob does, or somebody does, how this is going to play out in the real world. But Henry Garrido, the executive director of DC 37, the other behemoth union looking to change our healthcare, is doubling down on this, and he made some disgusting remarks at the last delegate council meeting in June. They're so disgusting. Well, I don't know. Maybe some people know that he does answer my phone calls and emails. I don't want anything to do with him. He's threatened to send a referendum question to actives saying you have to vote on copays because these greedy retirees are fighting our attempt to dump current retirees and all future retirees to this Medicare Advantage plan. So Garrido and Mulgrew have split on this. And as I said before, I don't know what the ramifications will be. The second thing that we should be aware of is the legal issues around the mayor. And if he's indicted, and we all know that the mayor is, a number one proponent of all these healthcare scams. So we have to be aware of the legal issues surrounding the mayor, and if he is indicted, he will have to resign, or I think he has to resign. And the acting mayor is opposed to the map, or who will be the acting mayor. And then there has to be an election to fill a vacancy. So this particular aspect of it, although it's not front and center in our issue right now, it may be. And the third and last thing I want to say is about this copayment. And maybe Rob or somebody that knows these details better than I can elaborate, but my understanding is that OSA will reimburse 90% of everything over $500. And we're halfway there with the Medicare deductible. So maybe I'm wrong about this, but, Rob, maybe you can supplement this.
I'd love to supplement it, but it's not fully in my wheelhouse. The way the welfare fund does that, but I think you're very close, and certainly we do allow submission of out-of-pocket, non-covered stuff, except up until this year, you were not allowed to submit, drug costs, although that's changing, and God only knows how that's going to be handled going forward. I don't want to confuse people even more, because as you know, next year there will be a cap on out-of-pockets on Medicare drug costs. So we have no idea how that's going to be handled. So I appreciate your tossing it to me, but it's like what's the game where you toss it back? I'm going to toss it back. I would need to actually get back to people on that more mechanical question. But you actually just triggered something that I didn't want to forget to talk about, because it's something else that's a little outside of what we've been talking about. Many people have gotten a letter if they're under treatment at Memorial Sloan Kettering. And this letter is actually pretty offensive, because what's going on is, it doesn't have to be, it's not just for, I believe it's mainly for the actives, but it may be the Medicare retirees as well. I don't know that for sure. But what they're doing is they're playing political football between the insurer, Anthem, and themselves, and asking patients, cancer patients mainly, to get involved and pressure the insurer to come to a negotiated settlement on a new contract with Memorial. And I say a plague on all their houses. Actually, personally, I think this is outrageous. This isn't the first time. Last year or earlier this year, there was a problem between Mount Sinai and United Healthcare. Then last year there was a problem between Columbia Presbyterian and if I remember correctly, I think it might be Aetna. But anyway, this just keeps going on, and it's to me. And now I'm not speaking for the union; I'm speaking for myself. Just another symptom of a very dysfunctional healthcare system. And I just think that for them to put patients in the middle of this way, especially prematurely, since this change wouldn't happen and scare people that they may be losing their coverage, and encourage them to go be looking into other insurers and other insurance just before there's going to be an open enrollment period, certainly for the actives. It's sort of interesting as tactics. So I just wanted to get that out there, because it's sort of the latest bizarre development in our healthcare as city workers.
Well, can I just say one thing, Rob? It's
Sure.
not just the actives, because us retirees also have we used to have the additional coverage for Part A coverage. It gives us more days if you're in the hospital, that kind of thing. And that was recently changed from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. So I took that to mean that coverage is for us retirees is now also in jeopardy.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure about that, but I would just say that as far as I know, the Anthem versus Empire Blue Cross is a name change. They had changed their name quite a few years ago. They just never implemented it on all the materials, and that's why everybody got a new card that said Anthem instead of Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's not insignificant that about 20 years ago, Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield became a for-profit entity, and was no longer one of the nonprofits. That's when I don't know if folks remember this, but there was a big moment in like 2006-07 where first Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield became a for-profit, and then Emblem merged GHI and HIP. At the time when I was doing your newsletter, I had done a graphic where I had a heart which said Emblem underneath it, but in it said GHI HIP, and I said it's pronounced JIP. But anyway, the gist of it was that they then wanted to go and they wanted to go private and sell shares on the stock exchange, and the state and the city and the unions all said, just like it happened with Anthem, if you're going to do this, we want a piece of the pie. And since then the economy sort of collapsed with the Great Recession, it never happened. So they're still not for profit. Emblem is.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all that information. Bob, anything else? I see you're gone.
Well, am I muted? I guess I should say this. Yes, what Rob is a little different. I think most long-term retirees know this, but I should make it explicit that what's driving the union's desire to put us in the Medicare Advantage plan is to save, quote, save what's alleged to be $600 million in our healthcare costs, bobbing that off on the federal government. So the federal government will pick up this alleged $600 million bill, but instead of the money going to the city treasury, it's going right out on another budget line to the union's welfare funds. That's the scam here. And if you ever read that this $600 million is going to save the city taxpayers money, it's a lie. And it's, I forget the right word for it, it's a conscious lie, because the city knows it's not true. It's propaganda. Whenever you see a city spokesman saying they're gonna save $600 million. And this is why Garrido is threatening to hold a referendum, because we're stopping him from doing something illegal and something that is selling out our members. I guess I should, well, maybe I should, but no, I don't want to. It's Garrido and the low-paid workers. I don't want to go into that. But anyway, that's the scam. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Bob. Do people have questions or comments for Bob or for Rob at this point? A lot of good information about what's happening. Oh, yes, Patricia. Can you unmute yourself, Patricia? You still are muted. Rob, what am I doing wrong here?
I don't even see, where is she?
She's up at the have you unmuted yourself, Patricia?
Her hand's not up though.
And it is in mine, so, okay. Okay, all right, very good. So, okay, so we're going to move on. Thank you again both for all that great information. So we wanted to just sort of open the floor for any conversation you wanted to have with us, because it's the beginning of the year, our year, and it's also because it's also September 11th, and people might have things that they want to say about that. Just to start us off, let me just mention what we do have planned for the next couple of months, based on the survey that we sent out to you all and the responses that we got. On October the 9th, our October meeting, we're going to have somebody from the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office is going to talk to us about scams against seniors, which is not great, obviously. So it'd be great that we're going to have those folks talk to us. In November, we're going to have somebody who directs a program in Queens on early stage memory loss, which I know is something that people frequently are concerned about. You can't remember, a birthday, or you forget a word and you think you're in early stage memory loss. So it'd be good to sort of get that, get a little bit more information about that. And we're hoping for December to have our accountant Lloyd speak with us, because last year folks were saying that it might be better to have him before the tax season rather than after the tax season. But that leaves us with 5 months after the holidays to fill. So, I urge people to think about, or you could raise it now if you want, but to think about what you would like to have covered, because there's a whole lot of you out there. And if you have somebody like Judith knew this woman, Heather, Colleen, who's also on the board, had attended something from the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office and said, oh, I think they would like that at OSARC. So I'm sure many of you have moments like this, and it doesn't require you to really do anything other than just let us know if you know somebody, or if you have come across a topic you might like us to try and find somebody to cover. It's not always easy to find people, but we do our best, and people on the board work very hard at that. And anything you would like, again, just let us know. Okay, so other comments, questions people might have? or anything you want to say.
Eileen
Oh.
has her hand.
Eileen, hi Eileen.
Thank you for referring to 9/11. I tend to turn on the TV and hear some of the names. I can't do it all, but it's 23 years. It brought so many changes and so many sad changes. And it's just good to think about it, and I guess move on, but we shouldn't forget. So thank you for mentioning it.
You're welcome. Yes, many things have changed since then. Many more people are sick. And many more battles with the city over trying to determine how clean or unclean the air really was after 9/11. So unfortunately. Okay. Other thoughts? Yes, in the chat, Rob put in a link to the World Trade Center Health Program. So if you're having any you or someone you know who may fulfill the criteria, having been down at the World Trade Center site or within the boundaries that have been agreed upon in the World Trade Center Health Program, it's a good thing to do. It's Lower Manhattan up to Canal Street, I believe is it, but Rob, you can correct me. It's good for you to look into whether or not you qualify for having your name on this registry. And if you have any health problems, certainly you should do that. It's really important. There's a program is there for all of us, especially city workers who were huge numbers of the people who were either working after 9/11 or on that day. Okay, anything else people have to say in the chat or welcome? I'm gonna get sick of hearing me, so, oh, Karen, yay. Okay, yes, Karen.
I would just like to share that I attempted to get documentation from my agency, which was HRA, because I definitely fit the criteria. And when they dragged their feet for like a month or two, I reached out to my local, the city council rep, and got what I needed immediately. So if anyone is trying to get documentation, it may be helpful to go through your political representatives. Thank you.
I'd also add something to what Karen just said, which is just so that people are aware of this. If you find it impossible after doing all your due diligence to get proof of presence, there are many other ways to get proof of presence. You can get affidavits from people who worked with you, for example, as opposed to, yes, city agencies are notorious over the last 20 years. In some cases, they've lost records of, employment, things of this sort. Certain agencies are better than others. I'm not going to waste time trying to say which ones I think have been better. But the reality is there are ways around that. So you should not allow, if you're not well and you believe that exposure on 9/11 and in the period afterwards, up until in 22, have led to health conditions, you should basically try to apply and get the documentation, that you need, whether it be official documentation or even peer certification that you were present in a particular location.
Well, actually, Rob, that's interesting because I have a friend who became ill after working down there, and at the last second, there were questions about her application saying that she couldn't prove that she was that they needed something from. She worked for the federal government. She needed something, and it was very slow in coming, and they were giving her a deadline, but they said that she could have peers, friends,
Right.
coworkers write And I used to have lunch with her all the time, and I saw her on 9/11. And so I was able to write something that placed her in that place on September 11th, and also placed her working close by and during the months that are allowed. So and from that point they allowed her case to move forward. So that's not nothing. It's important to realize that just being a friend or a coworker can be very useful.
And also I'll add one last thing, which is that for a lot of folks, maybe not so as much for area workers like most of our folks were, but for residents too, there's a lot of confusion out there. And I just want to mention that, you know, there's the World Trade Center Health Registry, which is not a treatment program. It's not what it is it's essentially a study cohort that was opened right after 9/11 and was open for a certain period of time. And there were questions. It was being run by the New York City Health Department. And, you know, it's produced a lot of interesting research. It's produced a lot of other stuff. And they have actually tried to connect people with the World Trade Center Health Program. There's actually, for quite a number of years, there's been a formal way that they try to connect people up, but that's separate, quite different from the World Trade Center Health Program, which is something that a lot of folks in the community, including some of the people who are talking right now, spent an inordinate amount of their lives trying to fight to get through the federal government in 2010. There's also, of course, the Victims' Compensation Fund, which is a means of getting compensation for lost income and emotional issues as well. But starting with around 2015, in order to really qualify for compensation, you do need certified conditions from the World Trade Center Health Program. So the first place to start is with the health program. And a lot of folks who live down there tend to think of these programs as for responders only. That's not true at all. In fact, far more people who lived, worked, or went to school down there were exposed because of that fact that they lived, worked, or went to school down there than came from elsewhere to respond to the tragedy, or were working on the you know, were public servants working there like police or firefighters. Just want to make that clear, because there's a lot of folks who second guess their eligibility. If you think there's a possibility, do yourself a favor and, you know, pursue it.
Exactly. And the people that I know that I've spoken to about this were all city, state, or federal employees who were back to work within a couple of weeks of 9/11 and in Lower Manhattan, and therefore exposed to the dust and the fumes, et cetera. So please look into it, because it's really, really important to make sure you're protected. Karen, did you have something else to say?
Yes, as we all know from working with the city, which is definitely a bureaucracy, the World Trade Center Health Program is also a bureaucracy. So if you run into a wall or a snag or something, just keep at it. And there are different ways to get past the wall. That's all.
Thank you. I actually think Rob is talking about the federal program, right, Rob?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you just say the website so people have it? I know it's in the chat, but
It's www.cdc.gov/WTC.
okay, cdc.gov/WTC.
Right. And I'm trying to, for those who are interested in the Victims' Compensation Fund, it's, I believe it's vcf.gov.
I think if you Google these things, they should come up pretty quickly.
And there are also some organizations that are out there in the world that will help you to navigate some of this. In fact, they're like outreach partners for the World Trade Center Health Program. So one of them is 9/11 Environmental Action, which has a website. I'll put that one in the chat as well. It's 911ea.org.